My wife cheated while I worked overtime to pay our mortgage, so I left with everything she thought she owned and never looked back. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and for years, I thought my wife, Hannah, and I were building a secure life together. When we bought our house, it felt like the pinnacle of adulthood: the mortgage, the joint accounts, the little rituals of paying bills on time, planning vacations, and even arguing over paint colors. I prided myself on being the responsible one, the guy who worked late nights and extra weekends just to make sure we never missed a payment, never fell behind, never had to stress. I'd come home exhausted, my neck stiff from staring at spreadsheets and bank statements, and Hannah would greet me with a smile, saying, "I don't know what I'd do without you. You handle everything so well, I can just breathe." That praise became a lullaby I fell asleep to, believing we were a team. On paper, it was perfect. I balanced the budget down to the last penny, tracked every cent, and still managed to sneak in small surprises: a weekend getaway, a new coffee machine, a bouquet of flowers just because. But underneath it all, tiny red flags flickered, and I ignored them like shadows in the corner of my eye. A text that disappeared as soon as I entered the room, a late-night work call that smelled more like a lie than a client issue, expenses that didn't add up. Each time I noticed, I told myself, "It's just stress, it's just work, it's nothing serious." I rationalized every unease because the alternative, facing betrayal in the home I'd poured my life into, was unbearable to even consider. Still, I organized every account, every bill, every financial decision with obsessive precision, convinced that a stable life meant security, trust, and shared dreams. I set the stage for a marriage that looked solid, practical, and safe. I didn't see the cracks forming beneath the paint, the silent erosion that would one day turn my sanctuary into a battlefield. And then, one evening, I noticed her phone buzzing again, but this time, the screen lit up a message that made my chest tighten in a way no late-night spreadsheet ever could. I remember that night like it was yesterday. I was poring over the bills, double-checking the mortgage account, when Hannah's phone buzzed across the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, and a snippet of the message made my stomach twist. I froze. Part of me wanted to ignore it, tell myself it was nothing, but another part, an instinct I'd buried under years of trust, pushed me to glance. It said something casual, flirty, and dismissive all at once. My throat went dry. I tried to brush it off when I asked her later. "Just a friend from work," she said, smiling too brightly, waving it off like it was nothing. But the warmth in her eyes didn't reach her words. She laughed a little too quickly, shifted uncomfortably, and that small hesitation planted a seed I couldn't ignore. That night, I lay awake listening to the hum of the heating system, staring at the ceiling, running every scenario through my mind. Every text, every work call, every unexplained expense suddenly started to feel heavier, like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to solve. I started noticing patterns I'd conveniently ignored: her subtle flinches when my name popped up on her phone, the way she hit her screen, the small gaps in her stories about friends or colleagues. And yet, every time I confronted my thoughts, I told myself, "I'm imagining things. She's stressed. I'm overreacting." But even as I reassured myself, doubt settled into my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. Days went by, and the tension crept in quietly. I'd hear laughter from her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I'd notice receipts from stores I'd never visited. And each time I tried to address it, her responses were perfect, sweet, convincing, carefully designed to make me question my own judgment. By the end of that week, I realized something terrifying: my secure life, the one I'd worked overtime to protect, might not be as secure as I thought. And the truth I was avoiding was starting to claw its way into the light. I couldn't stop thinking about that message. It gnawed at me during work, while making dinner, even as I lay in bed next to her pretending to sleep. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, but the little whispers of doubt kept growing louder. Then, a close friend dropped a casual comment that hit like a brick: "You sure Hannah's really that busy at work all the time? I saw her with someone last week." The words echoed in my mind long after the conversation ended. My stomach churned, and I felt this icy dread settle over me. I started watching her more closely, but not in a controlling way. I told myself I was just being careful. The patterns emerged like constellations I'd been too naive to see: late-night texts that disappeared the moment I entered the room, whispered phone calls in other rooms, sudden errands she couldn't explain. Once, I caught her quickly locking her phone and pretending she was reading emails. The house, once my sanctuary, started to feel foreign. I'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at the bills I still managed meticulously, and feel this quiet rage simmering beneath the surface. One evening, I asked casually, "Who are you texting so much?" She laughed, brushing it off, "Just friends from work." "You worry too much, it's harmless." Her voice was calm, almost teasing, but there was that slight tremor I'd started noticing, the tension in her fingers, the way her eyes darted away. I felt the old trust one had for her fracture slightly, and it hurt more than I expected. Every laugh, every excuse, every subtle omission started to feel like a betrayal waiting to unfold. By the end of that week, I realized I was no longer just suspicious, I was scared. Scared that everything I'd built, every late night and extra shift, might have been for nothing. And then, that Sunday, I found something in the bedroom that made my blood run cold, something I couldn't explain away. That Sunday, I was looking for a charger in our bedroom drawer when I noticed her phone tucked under a pile of laundry. I hesitated, my hand hovering over it, heart thumping like a drum. Curiosity, and maybe something darker, won. I unlocked it, and the screen lit up with messages that made my stomach twist. Flirty texts, photos, emojis exchanged late at night, and casual mentions of secret meetups. My hands went cold. The woman I trusted, the woman I built a life with, was betraying me while I worked overtime to pay the bills, the mortgage, the life we were supposed to be sharing. I didn't know what to say at first. My mind raced, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it's innocent, maybe it's just talking, maybe she doesn't really. But the evidence was undeniable. I felt a mix of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak that left me shaking. She walked in at that exact moment, smiling, oblivious to the storm I was holding back. "Hey, what are you doing?" she asked casually. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just checking something. Can we talk?" Her expression flickered for a second, almost imperceptible, and I knew. I knew she had been hiding it, lying, manipulating, and gaslighting me. The room felt smaller, hotter. The walls seemed to close in as the life I thought I'd built crumbled silently around me. I had no words, no plan, just this raw, heavy weight of betrayal pressing against my chest. I spent the rest of the day going through everything, messages, receipts, emails, putting the pieces together like a puzzle I never wanted to solve. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized something terrifying: this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was deliberate. This was ongoing. And the woman I loved, the woman I gave everything to, was living a life parallel to mine. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart racing, mind spinning. I didn't know how I would face her tomorrow. The next morning, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of fabric made my stomach tighten. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, feeling like the world had tilted on its axis. Hannah came in humming, completely unaware that the foundation of our marriage had shattered the night before. I tried to act normal, to carry on with bills and breakfast, but every glance at her was like a punch to the gut. I could see her confidence, her calm demeanor, and it only made the betrayal sharper. I confronted her carefully, voice low and measured. "Hannah. I saw the messages. The photos. The texts." She froze for a split second, then forced a smile. "It's not what you think," she said, brushing it off as if she were explaining a minor misunderstanding. But the trembling in her hands betrayed her. I felt the old trust crumble entirely, replaced by a cold, aching clarity. She had no intention of stopping, no guilt, no remorse. That week was unbearable. Every time I came home from work, I could feel her carefully orchestrated lies waiting to collide with me. She laughed at things I didn't find funny, made excuses for being late, and kept her phone tucked away like a secret vault. I'd sit at the dining table, hands shaking, pretending to balance our finances while my mind replayed every message, every hidden call, every secret meeting. The emotional weight of knowing your partner is living a double life is suffocating. It gnaws at every thought, every interaction. Friends and family noticed my change, offering worried glances and hesitant questions. I smiled, lied, and said everything was fine, but inside, a storm raged. I knew the life I'd worked so hard to build, every late night, every extra shift, every penny saved, was now tied to a woman I couldn't trust. And in that moment, I realized the worst part wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was feeling trapped in a home I had made, surrounded by reminders of a life that wasn't mine anymore. I didn't know how I'd get out of it, but I knew something had to change. I hit a point where I couldn't even get out of bed. The weight of betrayal, exhaustion, and frustration pressed down on me like a physical force. Every time I saw her, laughing or scrolling her phone, my stomach twisted with nausea. I thought about all the late nights I'd spent working overtime, all the weekends I'd sacrificed, all the money I'd poured into our house and life together, and it felt like it had been stolen from me. My pride and patience, the very things I'd believed would protect my marriage, now mocked me silently. I felt utterly powerless in the place that was supposed to be my sanctuary. That week, I found myself sitting on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the water, thinking about how unfair life had been. I'd given everything, time, money, love, and she treated it like it was meaningless. I remembered our first year together, the late-night talks, the shared dreams, and now it all seemed like a cruel joke. My friends called, texted, checked in, but I barely responded. I couldn't bring myself to talk, any words would have sounded hollow. The betrayal had dug a hole so deep I couldn't see a way out. Even small things triggered a visceral reaction. Her perfume in the hallway, the sound of her heels on the floor, even the way she casually poured herself a cup of coffee made my chest tighten. I realized the life I thought I'd built was just a facade, a carefully curated illusion while she lived a secret life at my expense. My rock-bottom moment wasn't just heartbreak, it was a complete, soul-crushing clarity that I had to reclaim my life, or risk being crushed completely. I sat there, staring at the mirror, my reflection a mix of anger, despair, and resolve. For the first time, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg, confront, or cry over what she had done. I was going to take back control, in a way she would never expect. After days of staring at the walls and replaying every lie, I realized anger alone wouldn't fix anything. I needed a plan, a careful, calculated approach to reclaim what was mine. I started quietly reviewing our finances, ownership documents, and legal agreements, mapping out exactly what I could claim if I walked away tomorrow. Every late-night spreadsheet, every bill I'd meticulously tracked, became ammunition. I made discreet calls to a lawyer, asking about my rights, about how to secure the house, the accounts, and everything I'd worked for. There was a strange sense of relief in taking action, even if it was still just on paper. I observed Hannah carefully, noting every habit, every pattern, every vulnerability she left exposed. Her overconfidence and ignorance became my leverage. She had assumed I'd remain blind, faithful, and trapped, working my life away while she continued her secret life. And that assumption, her arrogance, was my key advantage. I began preparing quietly, moving funds, updating accounts, and making sure every legal detail was airtight. Each step gave me a strange sense of empowerment, a flicker of the life I'd been denied for months. At the same time, I watched her continue as if nothing had changed. She laughed at things I didn't find funny, disappeared on mysterious errands, and smiled when I tried to act normal. But I wasn't the same man anymore. Every smile, every excuse, every careless word of hers only strengthened my resolve. By the end of the week, I realized something crucial. She had no idea the tide was turning. The power dynamic in our home, the one she'd assumed she controlled completely, was about to flip. And when it did, there would be no going back. It happened faster than I expected. After a week of quietly securing my finances and reviewing legal documents, I realized I held all the cards. The house, the bank accounts, even some investments were now fully under my control, things she thought she could touch, things she believed were untouchable. I didn't tell her, didn't confront her. I simply watched. Every casual comment she made about our future, or shared plans, fell flat because I knew she had no power left. And the knowledge of that, it was intoxicating. One evening, she noticed me checking statements on my laptop and frowned. "What are you doing now?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. I smiled faintly, a calm I hadn't felt in months. "Just making sure everything's in order," I said, deliberately vague. Her eyes flicked to the screen, but I had everything locked down. I could see her panic start to form, tiny cracks in the confident mask she wore for months. She had underestimated me completely, and the realization hit her like ice. The balance of power had shifted silently, invisibly. While she thought I was trapped in despair, I was quietly reclaiming my life piece by piece. Every late-night call she hid, every secret text she sent, none of it mattered anymore. I had the leverage, the evidence, the control. And she had no idea. By the end of the week, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She began questioning me, testing me, trying to gauge what I knew. But I stayed calm, letting her dig herself further into the corner she didn't even know existed. And as I lay in bed that night, I realized something shocking. I wasn't just planning to leave, I was about to take back everything she thought she owned, and she would never see it coming. I decided it was time. No more waiting, no more silent observation. I called Hannah into the living room one evening, the kind of quiet that made the house feel heavy with anticipation. She walked in, smiling as if nothing had changed, and I felt a surge of clarity, anger mixed with relief. "Hannah," I began, my voice calm but sharp, "we need to talk about your messages, the photos, and your extracurricular activities." Her smile faltered, a flicker of panic in her eyes. She laughed nervously at first. "It's not what you think," she said, voice shaky now. But I held up a folder with printed messages, screenshots, and bank statements. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said. She went pale, fumbling for excuses that sounded hollow even to her. Every word I'd spoken, every careful move I'd made, had left her defenseless. For the first time, she realized the life she had assumed she controlled was slipping through her fingers. I laid out the facts, the accounts, the house, the evidence of her betrayal. She tried to argue, tried to manipulate the situation, but I stayed composed. Calm, quiet, and in complete control. I watched the arrogance and confidence that had carried her for months crumble in real time. Every panicked glance, every trembling hand, every swallowed word reinforced the silent power I'd been building. By the end of the confrontation, she was visibly shaken. Her words had no impact, her lies no weight. The balance had shifted entirely. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief. After months of pain and betrayal, I finally had the upper hand. And yet, as she left the room, defeated and scrambling, I knew the hardest part wasn't the confrontation, it was watching her realize that her actions had consequences she could never reverse. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, signatures, and quiet precision. Every account, every asset, every investment she thought was hers was now under my name or locked securely. I moved silently, deliberately, no yelling, no dramatics, no desperate confrontations. I watched her panic grow as she realized her assumptions about control and entitlement were completely wrong. The house, our shared life, the money I'd worked years to earn, it was all mine to reclaim. And for the first time in months, I felt light, free, and untethered from the suffocating weight of her lies. When she questioned me, tried to manipulate the situation with tears or anger, I remained calm. "It's all legal," I said quietly. "Everything's been handled properly. There's nothing to fight over." Her confident smirk from months ago had completely vanished. She sputtered, searching for words that could save her pride or reclaim what she had assumed was untouchable, but there were none. Every attempt she made only confirmed my preparation, my foresight, and the power I'd quietly built. I packed my personal things, taking only what was rightfully mine, and left reminders of our time together where they could still exist without touching her illusions of control. I felt no joy in cruelty, only satisfaction in reclaiming what had been unfairly at risk. Walking out of that house, I didn't look back, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I had finally freed myself. I had worked through betrayal, heartbreak, and manipulation, and emerged whole, capable, and stronger than before. Even as I drove away, the quiet hum of the engine beneath me, the wind on my face, the streets unfamiliar yet mine, I realized something profound: the life I had rebuilt for myself was untouchable. And she could only watch it exist without her, powerless and exposed. Weeks passed, and the silence from her was deafening. Hannah tried to call, text, even email, but I ignored it all. Every attempt she made to reach me only reminded me of the control I no longer allowed her to have. Friends and family noticed the shift too. They could see the weight lifted from my shoulders, the calm confidence that had been buried under months of deceit and heartbreak. People who had once sympathized with her were now witnessing the reality of her choices, and it was clear, she couldn't manipulate anyone anymore. I focused on rebuilding my life, fully immersing myself in work, hobbies, and moments of quiet peace I hadn't allowed myself in years. Mornings felt lighter, my apartment finally mine, my time my own. Even small routines, making coffee, listening to music without distraction, walking through the city streets, felt liberating. I reveled in the knowledge that every late night, every paycheck, every ounce of effort I had poured into our life had not been wasted. I had taken back what was mine, and in doing so, I had regained myself. Hannah's life, on the other hand, began to crumble. She struggled financially and socially, her reputation subtly tarnished by her own decisions. The affair that once felt like freedom now became chains she couldn't escape. I heard from mutual friends that she was panicking over bills she assumed I'd cover, realizing too late that the stability she took for granted was gone. Watching from afar, I felt no glee, just quiet validation that justice doesn't always need drama to be devastating. I sat in my apartment one night, sipping coffee, reflecting on how far I'd come. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also forced me to confront my own strength, my boundaries, and my worth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free, truly in control. Months later, I sit in my apartment, sunlight streaming through the window, and I finally breathe. The life I reclaimed isn't perfect, no life ever is, but it's mine, entirely and undeniably. I've rebuilt routines, friendships, and a sense of peace I didn't realize I'd lost in the chaos of betrayal. Hannah's calls and messages have stopped, her attempts at influence are gone, and her world is quietly unraveling on its own. I don't need to gloat or confront, the consequences of her choices speak louder than any words I could ever say. I reflect on the years I spent working overtime, covering every expense, holding the household together, and protecting a life that wasn't being honored. It would have been easy to despair, to let the betrayal define me, but I didn't. Every late night, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt became fuel. Fuel to take back control, to build a life on my terms, to create stability without compromise. I realized that the strongest form of revenge isn't confrontation, it's walking away with dignity, strength, and proof that you can thrive without the people who tried to break you. Evenings are different now. I make my coffee, play music I love, walk through the city streets without tension clawing at my chest. I've learned to enjoy the little things that remind me of freedom, silence, self-respect, and a home I finally feel safe in. Friends notice the difference, telling me I seem lighter, calmer, unstoppable. And I know it's true, I am. The betrayal that once consumed me is now just a chapter, a lesson, a memory. I've reclaimed my life, my finances, my peace, and my self-worth. And as I lean back, feeling the quiet hum of a life fully my own, I finally understand, the life I deserve isn't given, it's claimed. And I claimed it completely.